All right, we're going iOS. So the too long didn't watch part of the video is after graduating high school, went to Cal Poly, took a mobile application development class where I learned iOS development using Xcode, learned Swift, how to use storyboards, all of that. Went to some hackathons to build up my resume, and then after graduating from Cal Poly, found a position at Haas Automations and been there for 3 years. So it's 2010, my junior year of high school, and I get my first Android phone. It's the HTC MyTouch 4G. And back then, HTC was definitely the top manufacturer, but nowadays HTC, I don't think they even make phones anymore. Um, but anyways, I get my first Android phone, and I loved using these applications right on my phone. And I thought to myself, I had so much fun not building them, I had so much fun using them that why not learn how to build them? Because I thought that would also be really fun. So at that point, that's when I decided I wanted to learn how to do Android development. Now, fast forward like a year later or so, and I decided to apply to Cal Poly, majoring in computer science. And I chose that major just because that major aligned most with what I wanted to do, which is Android development. And so that's what I went with. So I got into Cal Poly, super excited because one, I got into Cal Poly for computer science. And in my mind, computer science meant Android. Um, Honestly, I didn't really care about computer science, but I saw it as a stepping stone into Android development. And two, because Cal Poly had a marching band, which is a whole separate story. Um, but we'll focus on the Android computer science part for now. So the computer science department had these concentrations that you could be a part of within the computer science major. I think one was robotics, another was like the arts, applying computer science to the arts. But the one that I was interested in was the mobile application one. So I picked that concentration. It wasn't really a concentration. It was like your starter class. Kind of similar to the Pokemon games where you chose your starter Pokemon. This is kind of like what the computer science department did. You got to choose your starter class, and I just happened to choose the mobile application one because I wanted to do Android, and so computer science um, plus mobile application starter. I was like, yes, I'm on my way to learn Android development. So I go into my first computer science class, and it's called Introduction to Computing. And going into the class, my expectation was to learn tools to learn how to do Android development, and that's not what I got. I was really disappointed. It was more like we're using mobile application development as a vehicle to learn computer science concepts. So the first the first thing we learned in that class was how to use Scratch, and that was really trying to get a graphical user interface. Um, oh man, I remember going into one of the classes for my intro to computing class, and for most college classes, the lecture and the lab were held at two separate locations, but for this class specifically, it was all in the same place. So I walk in the lab, and in the computer science lab, this one had 6 rows of computers, and each row each row could hold, I don't know, like six students. I remember sitting in one of the middle rows, and I looked behind me, and this guy was editing his resume. I remember looking and his resume was like packed. It was like ready to go for like one of the bigger companies, probably with like Amazon or Facebook or whatever, the fangs. Um, and I was that really set like I just felt so behind at that point, and that set like a pretty big precedent um for me going into college. Yeah, not a good time. Already my first quarter and I already felt behind my peers. But anyways, I go into this intro to computing class, and I remember there were two distinct parts of the class. The first part was using Scratch, which is this GUI based like programming, and it was really to get our foot in the door into like programming using if statements, for loops, just getting used to logic and programming, and that was all fine. We spent maybe like a few weeks on that, but Scratch was used as a vehicle to learn MIT App Inventor, and I think MIT App Inventor was based off of Scratch, and so first we were learning Scratch to learn MIT App Inventor, and MIT App Inventor was basically the same thing as Scratch, but it was for making Android apps. So it was creating Android apps, but you had pretty large training wheels, basically. So we do that for the first like half of the class, and I remember making a campus dining calculator because I got tired of calculating uh, the options manually. So I think I remember having just like a bunch of buttons that had predefined values, and tapping on them would calculate the total prices of all the values you tapped on. And so I don't know if it had any use, but it saved a few seconds. So we had that. The second half of the class was learning Java, and I remember having such a hard time learning how to use Java. It was just so verbose. So yeah, so I thought to myself, if I can't learn Java, how am I supposed to do Android development? Java was super hard to learn as a first programming language. I would not recommend. That was really the last time I would touch Android for a while, because after that class, I was really thrown into the computer science curriculum, and I spent most of college just like surviving. The first half of college, I did terrible. Like I was on academic probation, which is not good. Basically, if you get below a 2.0 GPA, you get put into AP, and if your GPA, if your core GPA falls below the 2.0, and you're an AP, you get kicked out of the school. Yeah, so the first half of my college career, I had to take a lot of classes twice because I failed them the first time, and I really started to contemplate like, do I really want to stay in this major, because I was just so bad at computer science and programming and all of that. And I think it was because I really wanted to do Android development, and school got in the way of doing that. Like I just wanted to go straight into Android development. I didn't want to do like my fundamental work. I think around my second year of Cal Poly, I really wanted to leave. I left for a quarter to transition into majoring in information technology IT over at CSUCI. Decided that I didn't want to go that path after a long conversation with my dad, and decided to go back to Cal Poly and finish my computer science degree there. So after all that failure, I really had to, pull my bootstraps up, and make sure that I don't fail as much anymore. and all this failure was getting in the way of my original goal was to learn Android development. So I felt pretty distracted. So that was my first half of Cal Poly. After I came back, and it was technically my third year, my junior year. I would consider this like my second half of my Cal Poly career, even though like the second half was 3 years, first half was 2 years. Anyways, fast forward to 2017, and I'm in my upper division classes, and there's an opening for this class called Mobile Application Development, uh, CSE or CPE 436, and I'm like, dude, this is it. Like, this is the class. So I register for the class, and I get in, and like the first week of class, I found out that the class is going to be taught in iOS, and so I'm like, what the hell? I asked my professor, are we ever gonna do Android development? And he basically says, no, this is what the department wants me to teach, so I'm teaching iOS. So I'm like, all right, I learned iOS. I thought it was better than, not learning how to do any mobile application development. So like, okay, I'll learn how to do it. This was during the summer of, I think, 2017. Yeah, summer of 2017. I learned how to use Xcode. I learned how to use Swift, which honestly probably my favorite programming language right now. Learned how to use Storyboard, and when I was learning how to use Storyboard, I was so confused. I did not know how the constraints worked at all. I got a lot better at it after a couple weeks. For the final project, I built this application called Explain Like I'm Five minus minus, and it's an application that takes threads from the r slash explain like I'm five subreddit, and it takes the top explanation or the top comment, and it attaches a like image to help visualize the answer. In my opinion, it didn't really work that well, but as a first application, I thought it worked great. And our professor had us use three APIs. Uh, so I used Reddit to pull the information from the Explain Like I'm Five subreddit. I use Google's Cloud Natural Language Processing to get keywords from that top post. And then I used Google's custom search to use those keywords as search terms for the images. After this class, I knew I had to build up my resume to prove that I could be a software engineer or a developer, programmer, whatever title you want to use. And I had iOS development experience, so I just decided to build on top of that experience. I went to two hackathons to help build up that resume. The first one that I went to, well, it wasn't the first one, it was the second one that I went to, but the first one that I went to was before the iOS development class, so let's not count that one. The first one was Startup Weekend. It wasn't a hackathon per se, or strictly a hackathon per se. It was more of like an entrepreneurial like weekend where you're supposed to pitch a business idea at the very end of the event. And each each team had three sets of people. There were the business folks, the designers, and the developers. And so I joined a team as a developer, and our idea was to have synchronized stadium lights, and the stadium lights were supposed to be people's phones. And so my role in my group was to synchronize like lights in some sequence to make it appear to have some sort of pattern. That was really like the first time I made an application outside of purely academics.
So your initial market is going after stadiums with, so football games, baseball, that type of thing?
Yes, and also concert stadiums as well.
Okay. So if I'm understanding this correctly, so this is an app that's on your phone that turns on your light, and then does it sync with the music or the game or different times, or how does that work?
We could have many different things that it would sync up with. So we could sync it with the music, which is something we've looked into, and we can also just produce a pattern across the stadium, maybe even going to the music.
So that was a lot of fun. We got I don't know I forgot what we got. Did we get like second place?
3, 2, 1. Firefly for Hunter.
Wow.
All right, so Firefly was biased by the fact that I have an unhealthy fascination with all things lighting, and so no, but as light is a thing that emotionally connects people. If you can figure out a way to pull the business model together, there are powerful things to be done in all things lighting. I'm a believer.
I don't know if it was a good business idea at the end of the day, but I used it mainly as a vehicle to build another iOS project. So I was like, oh, why not? Um, the second hackathon I went to was SB Hacks 2018. I think it was SB Hacks 4, and that's where I met Matt. And yeah, the project for that weekend was to, let me see here, a augmented reality application that takes your locations and shows you significant points of interest around you, and it's supposed to generate like a marker for you to navigate to that location and some information. So it was supposed to be like Google Maps, but for AR. And I remember we didn't really like implement it 100%. I think the idea was there, but it was mainly supposed to be used to explore UCSB. And yeah, I used that as another project. So I added that, to my resume. So fast forward to my Cal Poly graduation, which was December of 2017. I had 3 projects under my belt. I had my final project from my 436 class, which was Explain Like I'm 5 minus minus. The app from Startup Weekend, which I learned is called Firefly, which is a pretty cool name, I think. The last project was around from SB Hacks. I graduate from Cal Poly, and it's super exciting because, finally done with school. Because at the end of the day, I'm not a big fan of school. I mainly use school as like a stepping stone into computer science, and computer science was really just a stepping stone into like mobile application development, specifically Android. But I went out of Cal Poly and the hackathons learning how to do iOS. And because I took that iOS development class, I wanted to keep building on that foundation that I learned in that class. And I thought that was a more efficient use of my time than trying to learn Android. Yeah, I graduated from Cal Poly, and it's the beginning of 2018. I don't have any work. I don't have a job at that point. And that January and that February of 2018, I'm looking for work, specifically iOS, because I had these 3 projects under my belt and on my resume, right? And I'm about to expand my search like outside of Ventura County because I wanted to stay home. Like I need to work fast. I was already like moved in back at home, so like, all right, I'll try to stay around the area, right? And I'm looking around the county, and there's not really any iOS developer positions or even like software engineering positions. I did apply to some other like software engineering positions that weren't specifically iOS, but I was mainly looking at iOS because that was where I had the most experience. I was about to expand my search outside of the county until I found my current position at Haas Automations. So they had a position up for an iOS web like developer position, and I was looking at the job description, and they wanted a senior developer to apply. And I thought, dude, there's no way I'm gonna get this position. Like they're asking for 7 years of experience, which which is a little crazy because at that point, if you had 7 years of experience, that means you started when iOS was only like 3 or 4 years old. So they wanted like 7 years of experience and like all these credentials that I thought I didn't have. But I tailored my resume to get my foot in the door and to get an interview. So I just scrubbed through the description of the position, and I used a bunch of keywords in my resume. If you would like to know what my resume what was on my resume, then I don't know, maybe that could be another video. Yeah, I was like, all right, I'll just apply to this. Why not? It doesn't hurt. And I got an interview, and I was super excited. Did the interview, and I got the position. I was like, yes. I found work like after 2 months graduating. Most people at school found work before they graduated. So whether they had a intern position that got promoted into like a regular full-time position, or they just applied before graduating, most of my peers had their stuff together, or so I thought. They had their stuff together, at least like career-wise. So again, I thought I was behind, but it only took me like 2 months to find to find work. So I was super happy about that. And yeah, fast forward now to 2021, and I've been working at Haas for almost 3 years now. My review's coming up. That's my journey into iOS. I started wanting to do Android development because of my first smartphone. Wanted to do Android development, but I picked up iOS development because that was offered at the mobile application development class, and I used that foundation I learned in that class to, build other apps. Yeah, if you have any other questions about my path, let me know, and take care. I'm editing the video the next day, and then I just wanted to add that this is only one path to becoming an iOS developer. I went the college route. I was very fortunate to have my university teach a iOS development course. The two other paths that I know are the self-taught path and the bootcamp path. And you can look on YouTube on those paths. But I went through the college route, and again, I was super privileged and fortunate to have Cal Poly teach an iOS development class. All right, that's all I wanted to add. Take it easy.